9 minutes time.
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to change it off of Bloomberg at 2:30, but I want to see what they're going to say for the Fed rate hike. We're going to watch Jerome Powell at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I won't be covering it on Bloomberg, but I do have Bloomberg on right now, just so that we can see when they do deliver the rate hike, so that we can see, because they're awaiting the decision as we speak. I do greatly appreciate everybody who's going to tune in and watch this. Matt, welcome in. ATKO Johnson, thank you everybody for prayers to Julie as well. Jorge, XR Pied Piper, welcome in. Julie's doing good. Crypto, gold, silver railing up a bit. Chance, welcome in. Frank, Messi, Infamous, good evening or good afternoon. So Julie, just so everybody knows, she is home. Her surgery was successful. She's sleeping right now. So yeah, it was actually her 5th surgery. I think I said 6th earlier, so she's back home. So I appreciate the prayers from everybody and the thoughts and everything this morning. So right now we're awaiting the Fed's rate hike. They should be announcing it here any minute. And then at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to listen to Jerome Powell live. Once we hear the decision, we'll go through the markets. We'll do the midday market report leading into 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when Jerome Powell will deliver his speech. So that's what's going on right now. We can listen to this right now as we await the incoming Fed rate hike. I wanted to start this just a tad bit before 2 o'clock just so we can hear when they announce it.
There are a lot of headwinds in 2024 from a policy perspective. Number one, the higher rate hikes are going to start to bite. Number two, the refinancing. People talk about maturity.
Welcome in, everybody.
That are coming.
Rock and XRP, welcome in.
To do business. And number three, it's going to put pressure on valuations, right? So bond yields being higher.
What do we think, everybody? Are we going to stand pat or get a rate hike?
Continuously put pressure on.
It's imminent.
The broader market,
the announcement's imminent.
Equity markets, I would even say. Just given the alternatives that investors.
But the buzz across all media outlets is they're going to stand pat. If they stand pat, it's going to be a big issue. I still think 25 basis points. Here, I'll turn on closed captioning, and I can turn the volume down if we don't want to actually listen to them. But at least we can have the closed captioning behind it, I suppose. But I think 25 basis points, if you do what the European Central Bank did, if you do what Canada did, I mean, but here, let's listen to what they're saying leading into this so we can get the buzz right now. Make sure that like button is greatly help push me through the analytics. I greatly appreciate everybody. I really do, but I don't want to talk right now. I want to let you guys hear this as we get into the rate hike. It should be announced here within the next couple of minutes. Then we'll go over the midday market report. And then at 2:30 p.m. is when Jerome Powell is going to talk. So we're awaiting it right now, the Fed rate decision.
To risk it a little bit on the jobs front in order to get inflation down. So I hate to phrase it this way, but I think that a mild recession actually plays well in the Fed's calculus to get inflation down.
No problem, Mike.
So I think they're willing
Thank
to
you,
push
KB.
And
welcome
risk
in,
that
Fiona.
in
Thank you.
inflation
Lower.
to target. So let's not call it a single mandate, but
they're not going to lower it. They're not lowering rates.
Do we call that a soft landing, Kathy? I'd love your view on that. We throw around these phrases. I don't know what they mean anymore. What is a soft landing to you, Kathy? What is it?
I think it would be a slowdown in the economy
Focus, good afternoon.
a reduction in inflation
Marcus,
without a big rise in unemployment. And I agree with Jim. That's a tough thing to pull off. It's more likely we'll have some sort of a downturn in the economy if we really have a Fed that's determined to get back to that 2% target on inflation. So soft landing, seems
dollars.
Like,
the U.S. dollars come below the rising channel.
I think every Fed wants
now
to
instead of pushing up a firm rejection here, you could get a pull down to.
I think a lot of people listening.
A bit of a pull down here.
Jim, one
we'll
thing
see
you've
what
been
happens.
Fantastic at all year. I'm sure there's many, but I'll pick out one. You asked us to ask and really question what could go right this year. And when we think about risk, there is upside risk, not just downside risk. Jim, how are you thinking about that particular question now?
Yeah, look, I still think that there are upside risks. I mean, it's we're talking a lot about recession, but we also have to recognize that if it's a mild recession or if it's a soft landing of some sort, however we define that, earnings growth, when we think about bottoms-up earnings, that's been rising. 2024 earnings around $240
I don't know. I don't really like the way
right
that
now.
looks.
Many people were forecasting that we would have sub $200 earnings, right? Multiples have
Something don't look
held
right
up
there.
reasonably well. I think what could go right is that the market looks
something
through
don't
what
look
is a
right there.
mild, what could be potentially a mild recession, and buys the dip quicker than what many people think. The number one question I get from a lot of clients is, I missed the rally, where can I
Welcome
get
in, Tanya.
So
You and me
a lot
both.
of people with dry
You
powder
and
that's
me
looking to
both.
buy the dip.
Angela,
Kathy, I want
welcome
to give you the
in.
final word. What's the number one question you get from clients at the moment? Is it the same one?
The number one question I get from clients is, when do I extend duration?
So basically all we're doing here is we're waiting to hear the Fed rate. We're waiting to see what they do here. Make sure you hit that like button. We have 69 people in here, 38 likes. 2:30 p.m. is the juicy stuff when Jerome Powell speaks live. I'll be covering that live. But today I wanted to do it leading in, and then we can cover the market as the imminent decision we're awaiting right now, the FOMC rate hike.
In Washington, D.C. with Chairman Powell. Plenty of questions, of course, for Chairman Powell. But TK, before we get there, you've got the meat of a statement. And then
that would be very interesting if I drew everything out with X's and O's.
2023, how much movement will be expected?
Catnip, welcome in. Paul, I appreciate you tuning in. Darren, welcome in, mate. Messi, yes, hit that like button on the live.
Does that change the median? And then out to 2024.
I think the dots are the most important thing this time. I usually don't say that, but within that is the background news. Is he going to address a strike in Detroit? I believe is Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan will speak in Detroit today. Maybe he's already done that. We're a bit out of the time zone here, but I think there's a set of data and a set of global events right now, including China, that he has to allude to in this press conference. That's not seen in the dots. The dots are a pure U.S. guess. There's more going on than the dots.
So Andrew Hollenhorst City is going to join us in the next 30 minutes or so. Andrew put out a note, publishing with the team a little bit earlier, City Economics, and they made 3 points, TK. One is the strikes with UAW. The second was oil.
I mean, they always talk about such
prices. I would pick up on oil and throw in China. So on oil and China were believed to be tailwinds at the start of the year. Energy was coming in, China was reopening. Are they headwinds now at the back end of 2023? Most people would assume they are.
What they are, and this goes to data dependency, there's something that's happened in the last 14 days. Maybe it's 20 days, I'm not keeping that count. But this surge that we've seen in oil, with Javier Blas looking at Saudi Light near $100 a barrel. I saw a 97 quote on Saudi Light spot, I think 48 hours ago. That's new, and that's new for the people. The Eccles building, they are data dependent, but it's just not economic mumbo jumbo. It's what's going on in the rest of the world, including China.
Neil Dutta of Renaissance Macro wants the last word going into the Fed decision.
He's one of our best guests.
Dutta writes in, this is wishcasting from the Fed.
Look what they just put out. Look at this. So when everything is all about the rate hikes and everything, so at Goldman Sachs warns a government shutdown could trigger an economic data blackout that could impact the Fed's next rate decision. A longer shutdown means that in November, the FOMC is maybe flying blind. That's the new narrative right now, ladies and gentlemen. I heard it talked about all day today, about the shutdown, how the SEC, even Gary Gensler came out today and talked about if there's a government shutdown, the SEC won't have as much of a pull. You think? So you mean if the government shut down, you can't have all these different agencies intertwining and working over corrupting the system? Oh, wow. I mean, seriously, that's the big story right now on the down low here. They're not really talking about it on the front lines here, but they're talking about that government shutdown in November and how it's going to affect the SEC, the next FOMC meeting, yada, yada, yada. I mean, the fact we can't even pay our bills, all it means, the fact we're about to have a shutdown, is we can't pay our bills. They keep it unchanged.
Fed's Jim Bullard's retirement.
So the Fed keeps it unchanged. Oh boy. Guess what, guys? Everybody who was rooting for the not being changed, like we said yesterday, if they don't raise it 25 basis points, they're literally launching us into hyper. This is a disaster in the making now. Get ready for things to get even more expensive at the grocery store. Get ready for price inflections to be even more crazy. Expect the oil to go parabolic. This is bad. Everybody thinks the market's going to erupt off of this news. This is bad. Once everybody gets the idea that now we're not raising rates, this is horrible. Now we're behind the European Central Bank. Now we have no cojones. They've now shown that they have no resilience to fight inflation. Now it's over. I would now start transferring your wealth, especially if you haven't now, out of the US dollar. They have showed they're going to put up no fight, and they're going to put our kids' mortgage, our kids' future. This is bullshit. They couldn't even do a measly 25 basis points when they should do 400 basis points right now. They should do a 4% increase. Instead, they stay pat. It was expected. Yeah, that's what I said yesterday. They need to do a 25 base point rate hike. I want it to be a 25 points. Yes. Yes, my voice is cracking. It's being lost. So you're right. I need to not yell. Wow.
Points from their June projection. And for 2025, 3.9%, up from 3.4% in June. The long-run neutral rate is unchanged at 2.5%. 5.1 policymakers leave.
But it's just not equal.
Let's see the reasoning for this, everybody. Let's see everything that they said.
It was totally unchanged. To the bond market, yields on a 2-year shaping up as follows. Near, in and around 5% on a 2-year in America, 5.05%.
Rate move on the table for this year and take 2 reductions off the table for the next 2 years. The statement once again discusses, quote, the extent of additional policy firming that may be appropriate. And the dot plot shows that 12 members of the Open Market Committee still believes they will raise rates by another 25 basis points this year. The high dot at 6.25% comes out of the dot plot with St. Louis Fed's Jim Bullard's retirement. For 2024, the committee now sees a median effective Fed funds rate of 5.1%, up 50 basis points from their June projection. And for 2025, 3.9%, up from 3.4% in June. The long-run neutral rate is unchanged at 2.5%, although the central tendency range moves up to 3.3% from 2.8, and the dots show 7
We are
members
so
think
fucking
that
screwed.
neutral is higher than 2.5. All this because the Fed sees
For anybody who knows
stronger
what this
growth,
means, we are
lower
so
unemployment,
screwed.
and lower core inflation ahead. The
If you
economy
thought,
should grow 2.1% this year, they say.
we're going into
That is
full-blown
up from
hyperinflation
1%
in 20.
their
It's
June
over.
forecast,
2024 is going to be the
doubling.
year of the end
They
of the
say
U.S.
Next year growth will be 1.5%, up from 1.1%.
Absolutely, Cat.
Unemployment will
This is
finish this year at 3.8%, down from their June forecast of 4.1%, and in the next 2 years end at 4.1, down from 4.5. PCE headline inflation will be 3.3% this year, up a tenth, basically on energy concerns, but their core PCE forecast falls to 3.7% from 3.9%. Next year, it falls to 2.6%. And one final note, no change in QT. No
Look at the
change
2-year,
in
look at the
IOR
10-year.
or repo rates.
Mike, stay close. I'm just going to work through the price action. So off the back of this decision,
Oh,
we're
it's
negative
absolutely
by,
part of
let's
it.
call it 0.2%.
Which means, you know what comes next after a rate hike doesn't go into place? They're greenlighting another QE. That's the significance here. The only reason they wouldn't raise rates is because they know they're going to print a bunch of money and they don't want to add another 0.25% when they pay it back. That's it. But this is going to have overlasting effects here. I'm telling you, we were better off in crypto with a bigger rate hike than nothing. Because now you have the US dollar tinkering here. It's going to tinker. If they want to raise it real quick or do whatever, that could be why it started to break down the US dollar before the announcement. Because they're getting ready to print. Unless they do the opposite. We'll hear what Jerome Powell says. But I don't expect anything great now. I just expect another bunch of line of horse shit. This is the worst possible news. And I even said I was rooting for a 25 base point rate hike because I couldn't fathom them keeping it in place, even though that was the narrative. Because what it does when you don't raise interest rates in the environment we're in is you literally bring us into hyperinflation so much quicker. The overall lasting effect here and the snowball effect here now throughout the economy, this doesn't just look at, I have a 4-year-old right now, no future. There is no, you better, if you have kids, you better make the future for your kids now, because it's over. Unless you want them to be controlled, you've got to make it now. This is it. This is legitimately the last chance for humanity to get it right for themselves. If you don't get it right now, you're going to be a slave for all eternity. Because once you transfer over to the next, they don't call it the biggest transfer in wealth for no reason. You got to get it right now. Make sure to hit that like button. More people need to see this. I'm so I swear I'm so tired of the narrative that I've gone so much to just, I don't give a crap what I do care, because the positivity over negativity. But as far as hurting someone's feelings over the truth, I can't worry about that. We're all in it together. We do positivity here. But at the end of the day, this is, for anybody who doesn't understand, you think it's bad now, wait until wait until next month. Wait until November. Wait until January of 24 when we go to the store. This, for anybody who doesn't understand what's going on here, some people are cheering, yeah! They didn't, watch the narrative. They didn't raise rate hikes. Everything's getting better. The economy's constrict. I mean,
on the S&P 500, as you might expect, the Nasdaq underperforming. If you turn to the bond market, yields were lower almost across the curve at the front end as well. They're now higher by 3 basis points. Looking at, staring in the face of the potential of closing at new cycle highs on the front end. 5.1287 turns to 5.13 on a US 2-year. So yields up, new cycle highs at the front end of the curve, and the dollar off the back of it a whole lot stronger. The euro against the dollar, 106.89 on the session, positive still by about 0.1%, but certainly off the back of that decision.
Of course the dollar spike, and that's all part of the plan here. Of course we're going to go parabolic. Oh, wow.
Basically telling me
and now what we do is you overinflate the dollar. Remember what I said? If you want to kill the dollar's last chance as the petrodollar with what's going on with the BRICS, this is the nail in the coffin. This is literally the worst thing they could do. Because now they're going to overinflate the dollar, which means every other currency par to the dollar right now, because it's the world reserve currency, goes down. You think people around the world want their dollar to be paired less because the U.S. keeps printing money? That's not a good way to be the banker. Imagine if you were the Monopoly man when you played Monopoly when you were younger. And just think about it. If you're the Monopoly man, and you just keep inflating everything. Oh, $200 for pass and go. Here's $2,000. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Well, what the hell? How come am I paying $14,000 to rent on this space? It's only supposed to be $400. Oh, I'm sorry. We've inflated things by 10 times, 20 times. I mean, it is smoke and mirrors. But the sad thing is nobody actually sees the smoke and mirrors in the USA or around the world. Everybody thinks this is how it's supposed to be. It's not. Now my question is, what's your course of action? You see this. So when everybody says, I'm going to sell my XRP for the dollar, for what? How good does that do you? The dollar is going to die. They've literally are. We all have our own plans. Remember, this is where they get you with the emotion. So this is a good testament to us. So we come out, we feel hot, we feel fiery, but this is where we're going to keep our emotions in check. And at 2:30, we're going to watch Jerome Powell, and we're going to see the narrative. Because like he always says, we're going to wait for the data. We have to wait for the numbers. We have to wait for the info. We have to wait for the statistics. We have to wait for the experts. We have to wait for Tom to say it's time. You know, they use all the excuses in the book.
It took back half the cuts that were priced for 24 in their previous projection.
That's basically what I'm telling you, John. They were looking at 4.6%, and now they've gone up to 5.1. Clearly, they think the economy is strong enough that they may need to do more. At least that's the message they want to send to the markets.
Mike McKee, I look at the growth forecast. You went through them quickly. Maybe they don't make the headlines. I think they should. Frame out again their growth vision, as Neil Dutta says, their wish casting for 2024.
Well, the biggest change is 2023. This year, obviously, the way things have been going, they need to mark up growth for this year.
So here's another thing to consider. This is what I always find funny. The U.S. 30-year, they're offering you 4.39% over 30 years. 4.34 over 10 years. Why would you only get 4.34% if you let them hold your money for 10 years? Or God forbid you get 4.39%. How come over 2 years they'll give you 5.13? What kind of moron would give them a 10-year yield or let them hold their money for 10 years if they're offering you 5.13? The yield curve's not supposed to be inverted like that. That's ridiculous. If I gave somebody my money over 10 years, I would expect a higher yield. I mean, come on. Yeah, the 6 month is 6.2. I mean, and then think about it this way. For a 30-year mortgage, think about this. Well, Tom, how can they do this? So over a 30-year, if I give the government my money, they'll give me 4.39. But if I take out a 30-year mortgage right now in Michigan, well, this is across the board. Right now, it's 7.8% to take out a 30-year fix. But they'll give you 4.39%. I mean, even if you go into real world terms of what they have it rated, right, why aren't you getting 7.8 just like you have to pay on a house, which you have to pay the bank? And that's with good credit. Imagine if you have a 600. God only knows what percentages they're throwing out there now. This is insanity. Insanity.
Solid 2.1% is their final.
The only good thing about this is, how many people do we have? 120 people watching. We've been covering this with the dollar since 2021, since I started here. And I've been teaching you how to become your own central bank and to take opportune moments when the dollar's overinflated to get your precious metals. We've talked about why you can take things like B2 Gold, where it pays over a 5.25% dividend right now, instead of putting it in a government bond. Like, and find a place. You can get these same bond yields. You don't need this. Oh man, this is so, I can't even explain to you how bad this is. I'm trying.
Growth, but growth next year is 1.5%. That's up from 1.1%. That's a fairly strong change. So they do see.
I mean, look at the dollar now. I told you. They're going to inflate this son of a bitch until it's over.
And it does certainly suggest the idea of a soft landing.
I look, Mike McKee, at where we are in this, and it gets to November and December. I know your first question to the chairman will be, tell me about November. Mike McKee, tell us about what this translates into for the next meeting.
Well, it's definitely going to put the markets on guard, depending on what kind of data we see, especially in the inflation numbers. The Fed's acknowledging that we're going to see a little bit higher headline, a little bit lower on the core.
4.35
and if that's what we get, then the Fed could decide to raise rates. It's hard to know exactly because of the energy components.
And like I said with gold and silver, don't get too excited about that today. There's definitely going to be a big reversal here if the U.S. dollar is doing what it looks like it's going to do. So don't get too excited here with precious metals
that are coming into this, but that's what to watch for when we get the CPI and PCE numbers. The other, of course, joker in the pack is if the government does shut down and there is no data, the Fed will have to use its own kind of methods to figure out where it thinks inflation is.
Mike McKee, thank you, sir. We know you've got to run and get to that news conference. Mike McKee's going to sprint to that. It begins in about 25 minutes' time. Just to go through the forecasts again, that is a monster upward revision to GDP. But they're market to market at the Federal Reserve. So they go from 1% to 2.1 for 2023.
I mean, look at the 2-year yields at 5.14. I mean, give me a...
The story for me...
I know a lot of you probably don't understand what that means, but the yield curve is so inverted. How can they give you 5.14% on a 2-year yield, and the 30-year they're giving you 4.39, I think it was. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. The longer they hold your money, the less they're going to give you. I mean, what the hell kind of world are we living in right now? I don't even know why anybody would use a bank. Doesn't even make it. This doesn't make any. It doesn't. We've literally are in la la land now.
Unemployment. They've got it at 4%, and PCE back down to 2. All the way out there, several years away, and this is the aspirational, fanciful stuff that this is how it's going to happen. Unemployment for this year, by the way, 3.8% is the forecast now, and it only climbs to 4.1% next year. Bruce Kasman talked about this a little bit earlier this morning at JP Morgan.
Hold on. 3.8%. Do you know how they calculate now unemployment? If you are receiving unemployment, you're not unemployed. It doesn't count towards the CPI. It doesn't count towards any of this. It doesn't count towards any of it. It doesn't count towards the unemployment rate, I should say. If you're actively looking for a job, you can count as unemployment. But after it's gone so long, if you've been looking for, I believe it's 6 months now, it might be a year, but 6 months or a year, you're now, even though you're unemployed, you don't count towards it because you fall off of the recording. Like, do you know what the real number of unemployment is right now? They also count into the rate. If I have 2 jobs, that's like 2 people having a job. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's just like the owner's equivalent rent. What does it matter what I think rent should be? I want to know what the real rent payments are. I know for a fact in my escrow, my house payment went from $1,300 roughly to over $1,800 by the raise in taxes and the raise in insurance now because of all this nonsense. So when they say it's not affecting the middle class, I can tell you, my house is not worth $1,800 a month. Yeah, they reappraised it for $235, but that's ridiculously overvalued. I paid I don't even know what I paid last year. It was Julie's cousin we bought it from. But $158 because it was so overvalued. Like, but to pay that, I can only imagine what's going to happen a year from now or 2 years. What they're doing with, like I'm telling you, everything is going up. I just got my DTE bill, the highest it's been in like 4 years. I just got, especially for this, I mean, it is what it is. The cost of like the sewer and water and stuff, my actual water bill this month for the last 3, I use $61 in water. That's not a lot for a family of 5 people living in the house. Well, guess what? Our bill was $274 because they keep raising what? The sewage removal and the sewage cleaning and all that. So there's no way to get around it. They're nickel and diming the middle class. So unless you put in more of an effort and try to get around this, we're all screwed. But that's why we're here. You don't have to feel like it's over. We have a chance. We're awaiting the Fed rate hike. That we already know that there was none, but we're waiting Jerome Powell at 2:30.
Tom, how high does unemployment need to go to get inflation lower? That's going to be a question we could explore in the next 25 minutes or so. But the Federal Reserve is telling you that they can get back to target 2% in several years' time.
Never going to happen. You will never see 2% ever.
4%. I'm going to go with Duddy here and combine it into what Matt Lazzetti said. I got lucky in that I picked out of Matt Lazzetti's note his first look at 2026. I don't even know if there's a first look to first quarter 2024. The uncertainty here, off the pandemic, off the shift from a supply analysis to a demand analysis of the economy, and that's a pretty clumsy move. John, I looking out to 26 now, maybe they're forced to do that, but boy, that's a tough thing to do. Let's do this, and we're very lucky today to do this because we can fold in what you're all reading and feeling about the strike in America. Diane Swank is
Gives a rat's ass. I don't care about that.
Greg, you've got to work with real money here. The decision to extend duration, to find the belly of the curve, all the other professional stuff you do at PGIM. Does the language and the nuance of the forecast and the dots, does that change your conviction in what you're doing with your portfolios?
Well, I would say that we're finally getting what we've been thinking for quite some time, and that is higher for longer, right? The markets have been raging against this notion that rates will remain high. All the forward curves are pointing down, the dot plot pointing down. So I think this really throws cold water on that. And so for us at PGIM, we really think it's a higher for longer. We never felt the need to jump into duration. Maybe it's closer to that now, but more in the back end of the curve. So, look, I mean, I think the Fed delivered exactly what they wanted to, provide a hawkish sap that allows them to speak more dovishly and perhaps not move rates higher here.
Greg, it's not just the high for longer message that jumps off the page of the SCP. It's the growth inflation mix looking out a year, 2 years, that they believe you can get back to target.
You guys are feeling the pain. I see some of these comments.
Going to drift higher, maybe to 4%, and basically stop there.
And that's my biggest problem, is how much land I have. I have an unusual amount of land for my neighborhood because I'm on a corner lot, and I'm very lucky. And yes, nothing you can do about the land. Yes, absolutely correct.
Greg, that has big implications for how you invest elsewhere, beyond rates, bonds, and to credit. Is that your outlook, that basically we can achieve back to target inflation, barely shaking up the labor market in any way, shape, or form?
Well, it is very aspirational. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that is a Goldilocks type of outlook. If you have an environment where, rates remain higher, but growth is quite robust and inflation is coming down, I think that is a fantastic investing backdrop. I do think we're pretty close to it. The challenge, of course, on the table is all these different uncertainties and cross currents, and that has not gone away by any stretch of the imagination. So, we need to take these forecasts with a grain of salt. There's no different than our own forecasts, right? They're rife with uncertainties, but I do think there's a distinct possibility here, at least directionally, and I feel pretty good about the outlook.
Jim Bianco, do you feel pretty good about the outlook?
If we're talking about the outlook about the Fed, I have my issues with it like everybody else, but to feed on something that Greg just said, let's be real. We all have forecasts, and most likely they're all wrong, but that's okay because we're not being expected to predict the future. The key is whether or not we can adjust. We can see that, okay, the data's coming in not as we expected, and we need to adjust these forecasts. Now, the Federal Reserve in the last couple of years has not had a good track record on that. We can all remember transitory. And what I'm afraid of with this Goldilocks forecast is when the situation comes in that it's not panning out, they're going to dig in their heels and continue to say it will, and they might wind up making another transitory type of mistake in 2024. I'd like to see Chairman Powell, show some flexibility with these forecasts to say, look, this is what we think now. But if the circumstances and data comes in soon, that's out the window and we're going to adjust. And that, like I said, that is okay. That is what you should do with a forecast, not just keep at it because you're afraid of some embarrassment of having to change it.
Jim Bianco, the laureate Paul Krugman, with a wonderful essay on disinflation. And I really emphasize what the Fed...
For anybody who's waiting for Jerome Powell, we're just leading into this right now. We got 7 minutes until Jerome Powell speaks. I've had about enough of these clowns, but at least you can see what's going on and you can hear the narrative. So no rate hike. They've completely bombarded us. Like I said, if they don't raise the rates, you're calling in for a disaster here. It's an absolute disaster in the making. They single-handedly are destroying the dollar here. And yeah, now when they overinflate it, because without a rate hike, they literally, without the rate hike, they have nothing to stop them from overinflating the dollar now, because now as they print money, there's not another 0.25 percentage point on there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Welcome in, Taylor. I appreciate you tuning in as always. Miss Vicky, I seen you snuck in here as well, love. Thank you so much. I see a lot of people are in here. We have 100 people waiting. That's great. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. But try not to lose my mind here. But this is, if you're having problems paying the bills now, I don't really know what else to say. We've got 6 minutes here. Let me put it on the station for the FOMC meeting. We'll talk for 6 minutes. And then we've got old Uncle Jerome, who's going to be talking. So I'm going to go to the FOMC station. We'll go to the Federal Reserve's their own page. So we're waiting right now for the 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll go through the market report real quick. As we've talked a little bit about it, the Dow right now is up 156 points. As we know, they stood pat with the Fed rate hikes, which makes absolutely 0 sense. They're literally mortgaging our kids' futures right in front of our very eyes. It's absolutely ridiculous. Mel, no problem, love. I appreciate giving my time. I do. Bill, welcome in. Can't lose what you've already lost. That's true. That is true. So with the Dow, are we getting ready to collapse, or with this, hello, thank you so much. MC Prosperity, thank you for the $10 donation. I greatly appreciate that. First donation of the night or afternoon. Greatly appreciate that. I know, Jose, we're all losing our minds. Anybody who understands the economy and the significance of it standing pat makes no sense. But the problem is 95% of Americans don't care. They don't care. I'm telling you, I live in the USA. You would think with what I know, my family members and everybody would be more involved, but they're not. They don't. Nobody cares. You know, that's just the way it is in the USA. Nobody actually gives a rat's ass. Well, Tanya, you know, this guy's a... Bob, I know you try to take your opportunities, but I can't even talk good enough for you to come out. Well, what are you trying to say? Anyhow, but with the Dow, this is what we're looking at. We got to go through this real quick. We got 4 minutes until Jerome Powell speaks and we can hear what his narrative is. Just pay attention to this. 4 hourly, we're okay. Still daily time frame, we could be starting to cross here. This is looking a little bearish, but we'll see what happens. With these lack thereof rate hikes, anything is possible. The DXY, you see how we're kind of in this descending structure. This looks like it's getting ready to break back. In the longer term, we're in the rising channel. But ultimately, does it seem like it's ready to die yet? Or does it seem like it's another indication of probably going higher? I mean, it seems like they're just going to parabolically rise this. I just don't see another way around this. We definitely had it too good for too long, and unfortunately, it's over. That doesn't mean we have to be negative. We can be positive and figure out a way to approach this, but this isn't good. Crude oil is on a retracement here, but crude oil is going to run parabolically. We already know it rounded the bottom. We already know 93.73 is a big resistance, but eventually, when it breaks out, you're going to get plus 130 or 140 crude oil, and it's going to start moving towards that $200 to $300 a barrel as the dollar gets devalued. I'm telling everybody, if the U.S. is the world reserve currency and it's used for petro, use it to buy crude, I mean, what are we going to do when everything gets devalued like our dollar? Everything's going to be so expensive here. We got 2 minutes until the Fed rate, or until Jerome Powell speaks. That's what we're waiting for. So if you're waiting, just be patient. We got 2 more minutes. But we do know there was no rate hike, so we're going to hear what the criminal organization themselves are going to say. Gold-silver ratio sitting firm at about 82.7. We knew a retracement was on the horizon. If you watched Midday market report yesterday, we were having a golden cross here in the daily time frame approximately. Yesterday it happened. Now we're getting the retracement. And if it holds, we should be able to break out of this region and start pushing up towards that 90 to 1 and greater. We could even get up towards 98 or 100 to 1, depending on exactly how high they want to inflate things. Besides that, gold, it's doing okay, but it's probably going to fall under some pressure coming up. We're hitting our resistance right now. It's no coincidence that right now we're hitting that resistance. Unless we're ready for a breakout, the technical target will be 2029. But it seems to me we're probably going to bounce around in here. And then for silver, pretty much the same story. Silver, the only difference is the silver's on the breakout attempt as to where gold on the breakdown consolidation. But I would be loading up all of these if you don't have them and start converting and creating your own central bank. It's just that simple. And then with XRP, as we lead into the Fed, that's what Jerome Powell's saying. We're going in at about 52 cents, so pay attention to that. That's the rising channel, but of course, TradingView, which is part of the agenda now because they're starting to do things they never did, it will consistently delete my stuff until I put it back up there like that. And then, so XRP, we're still within this formation. We're coming up towards that top end resistance. We have hit the 200-day now, so we've satisfied that move. It can come all the way up to about 54 cents, but they can overextend it, so just pay attention. We'll see how it reacts here, but Jerome's about to speak, so we're going back. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button. As we're currently awaiting Jerome Powell. Bob does think that, indeed. Oh, here he comes. All I'm going to say,
good afternoon, everyone.
If you got it and it's legal where you're at,
my
cannabis
colleagues
time.
and I remain squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote
hit that like
maximum
button, please. I would greatly
and stable
appreciate
prices
it.
for the American people. We understand the hardship that high inflation.
Oh, how
Price
convenient.
stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone. In particular, without price
Does he look unusually stoned today?
stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Since early last year, the FOMC has significantly tightened the stance of monetary policy. We've raised our policy interest rate by 5.25 percentage points and have continued to reduce our securities holdings at a brisk pace. We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening have yet to be felt. Today, we decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Looking ahead, we're in a position to proceed carefully in determining the extent of additional policy firming that may be appropriate. Our decisions will be based on our ongoing assessments of the incoming data and the evolving outlook and risks. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments.
I mean, at what point does the data, have you reviewed
economic
it?
activity has been expanding at a solid pace. And so far this year, growth in real GDP has come in above expectations. Recent readings on consumer spending have been particularly robust.
He is.
Activity in the housing sector has picked up somewhat, though it remains well below levels of a year ago, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. In our Summary of Economic Projections, or SEP, committee participants revised up their assessments of real GDP.
Who the hell made this?
With the median for this year
Somebody in kindergarten?
at 2.1%. Participants expect growth to cool, with the median projection falling to 1.5% next year. The labor market remains tight, but supply and demand conditions continue to come into better balance. Over the past 3 months, payroll job gains averaged 150,000 jobs per month, a strong pace that is nevertheless well below that seen earlier in the year. The unemployment rate ticked up in August, but remains low at 3.8%. The labor force participation rate has moved up since late last year, particularly for individuals aged 25 to 54 years. Nominal wage growth has shown some signs of easing, and job vacancies have declined so far this year. Although the jobs to workers gap has narrowed, labor demand still exceeds the supply of available workers. FOMC participants
I mean, are you
expect
kidding me? This is the best they could do. This is
easing upward pressures on inflation.
It's insulting.
The median unemployment rate projection in the S&P rises from 3.8% at the end of this year to 4.1% over the next 2 years. Inflation remains well above our longer run goal of 2%, 4% over the 12 months ending in August, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.9%. Inflation has moderated somewhat since the middle of last year, and longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. Nevertheless, the process of getting inflation sustainably down to 2% has a long way to go.
Let me ask you a question. Why is Jerome Powell doing this? Why isn't Peter Schiff the one giving us the economic news? Let's just call it for what it is. Why don't we just have Peter Schiff doing this? That's how it should be.
The median projection in the SEP.
I mean, look at this trash. How can they should be ashamed of themselves giving me this chart?
% this year, falls to 2.5% next year, and reaches 2% in 2026. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment.
Come on, don't even show me that chart. That's insulting.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. As I noted earlier, since early last year, we have raised our policy rate by 5.25 percentage points. We see the current stance of monetary policy as restrictive, putting downward pressure on economic activity, hiring, and inflation. In addition, the economy is facing headwinds from tighter credit conditions for households and businesses. The range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%, and to continue the process of significantly reducing.
They look like they have my marketing budget.
We are committed to achieving and sustaining a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation down to our 2% goal over time. In our SEP, FOMC participants,
I mean, look at this. What is
their
this?
individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate based
I give
on
up.
what each participant judges to be the most
No wonder he's always got to review the data. Look, this is their data. I mean, come on now. This is... There's so many better...
likely. Sorry, the most likely scenario going
Sorry,
forward.
I can't read off
If the
my
economy
screen.
evolves as projected, the median participant projects at the appropriate level of the federal funds rate.
Now I've seen it all.
5.6% at the end
This
of
is
this year,
embarrassing.
5.1% at the end of 2024, and 3.9% at the end of 2025. Compared with our June summary of economic projections, the median projection is unrevised for the...
This is how they're projecting the economy, ladies and... I'm sorry, I paused it. This is how they're projecting the economy. This is what they're looking at. This is... Oh, my God.
End of this year, but has moved up by a half percentage point at the end of the next 2 years. These projections, of course, are not a committee's decision or plan. If the economy does not evolve as projected, the policy will adjust as appropriate to foster our maximum employment and price stability goals.
Thank you for your service, XRB Fried Chicken, but I concur.
Based on the totality of the incoming data and their implications for the outlook for economic activity and inflation, as well as the balance of risks. Given how far we have come, we are in a position to proceed carefully as we assess the incoming data and the evolving outlook and risks. Real interest rates now are well above mainstream estimates of the neutral policy rate, but we are mindful of the inherent uncertainties in precisely gauging the stance of policy. We're prepared to raise rates further if appropriate.
This is too much.
And we intend to hold policy at a restrictive level until we're confident that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our objective. In determining the extent of additional policy firming that may be...
Do you notice they're not even hiding anymore? He's literally reading off of the tablet. They used to try to hide it. They literally just have it out in front of us now to see now. I mean, that's how stupid they think we are now.
Appropriate to return inflation to 2% over time. The committee will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary
Good time
policy,
to pick up some gold and silver.
the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation, and economic and financial developments.
Right, Miss Vicky.
We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. It's essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Oh, you might want to keep the tablet up there. How are you going to answer the question? Oh, that's right. They're all scripted. Let you get your notepad out of your pocket.
With the Financial Times. What makes the committee inclined to think that the Fed funds rate at this level is not yet sufficiently restricted?
Hit the like button if you think he's full of shit. How about that?
Especially when officials are forecasting a slightly more benign inflation outlook for this year. There's noted uncertainty about policy lags. Headwinds have emerged from the looming government shutdown, the end of federal child care funding, resumption of student debt payments, things of that nature.
Notice what they're showing right now. Top right. Pay attention to how the narrative is going to start shifting here in the next few weeks. Just pay attention to the top right. What is going on in this picture very closely for us to see.
So I guess I would characterize the situation a little bit differently. So we decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate where it is at 5.25% to 5.5%, while continuing to reduce our securities holdings. And we say we're committed to achieving and sustaining a stance of monetary policy that's sufficiently restrictive to bring down inflation to 2% over time. We said that.
Thank you, ATK.
But the fact that we decided to maintain the policy rate at this meeting doesn't mean that we've decided that we have or have not.
Oh, I guarantee now they have to raise it at the next meeting, or before the end of the year, they have to raise it a quarter point, which means they got to catch up to the ECB. This is all by design. That means now they might do a softer end of the year to the European central banks, and then we'll have to do a rate hike. It always goes in unity one way or the other.
This time reached that stance of monetary policy that we're seeking. If you looked at the SEP, as you obviously will have done, you'll see that the majority of participants believe that it is more likely than not that it will be appropriate for us to raise rates one more time in the 2 remaining meetings this year. Others believe that we have already reached that. So it's something where we're not making a decision by deciding to about that question by deciding to just maintain the rate and await further data.
Yes,
so right now it's still an open question about sufficiently restrictive. You're not saying today that we've reached this level.
We're not saying, no. Clearly, what we decided to do is maintain the policy rate and await further data. We want to see convincing evidence, really, that we have reached the appropriate level, and then we're seeing progress, and we welcome that. But we need to see more progress before we'll be willing to reach.
Can you imagine who he's married to? Are you ready, Mr. Powell? Well, I'm going to have to review the data to see if this is the correct position to insert myself. I mean, like, come on. At what point do we get the data?
Inclusion.
And just on the 2024 projections, what's behind that shallower path for interest rate cuts and the need for real rates to be 50 basis points higher?
Right. So I would say it this way. First of all, real interest rates are positive now. They're meaningfully positive. And that's a good thing. We need policy to be restrictive so that we can get inflation down to target, okay? And we're going to need that to remain to be the case for some time. So I think...
I'm actually embarrassed
remember
for them
that,
now.
of course, the SEP is not a plan that is negotiated or discussed really as a plan. It's accumulation, really, and what you see are the medians. It's accumulation of individual forecasts from 19 people, and then what you're seeing are the medians. So I wouldn't want to, bestow upon it the idea that that's really a plan. But what it reflects, though, is that economic activity has been stronger than we expected, stronger than I think everyone expected. And so what you're seeing is this is what people believe as of now will be appropriate to achieve what we're looking to achieve, which is progress toward our inflation goal, as you see in the SEP.
Hi, Chair Powell. Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions.
I'm sorry, did anybody just hear the flick of a lighter? I know that wasn't just me. There was a flick of a lighter at this meeting somewhere. I just heard a flick of a lighter. It's the greatest thing. I know I heard that.
Do you characterize
Who are these people now?
the debate around another hike or holding steady? Is it discussion around lag times, fear of too much slowing,
Thank you,
too little
Drew.
slowing?
I knew I heard
Could you
that.
walk us through what this disagreement was about at the meeting?
Yeah. So
Yep.
The proposal at the meeting was to...
I am not
maintain
cutting my
our
hair
current
until XRP hits
policy
a new
stance.
all-time high.
And I think there
I'm
was
telling you.
obviously unanimous support for that.
And it's
But
been
this, of course, is
I'm
an
telling
SEP
you.
meeting, and so people write down what they think. And you have some, you saw, I think 7 wrote down no hike at this meeting, or between now and the end of the year, and I think 12 wrote down another single hike in one of the next 2 meetings that we have between the end of the year. So it wasn't like we were arguing over that, people just stating their positions. And really what people are saying is, let's see how the data come in. We want to see, what we want to see. We want to see that these good inflation readings that we've been seeing for the last 3 months. We want to see that it's more than just 3 months, right? We want to see, the labor market report that we received, the last one that we received, was a good example of what we do want to see.
Throw it while you got it, right? I'm going to be 40 in a few months. I better do it now. It might not happen later.
Continuing a rebalancing of the labor market. So those are the 2 things. So those are our 2 mandate variables, and that's the progress that we want to see. But I think people, they want to be convinced, they want to be careful not to jump to a conclusion really one way or the other, but just be convinced that the data, support that conclusion. And that's why...
Hey, Zahag, see, this is a good example real quick. See the way you commented? People are sharing their opinion, but now you're insulting the ones who are suggesting otherwise. That's how you start to change a positive environment into a negative one very quickly just by one statement. This is how we can better ourselves. It's how we can better ourselves. That's how you go positive. That's a way to change that whole energy. But it's a perfect example.
Given how far we've come and how quickly we've come, we're actually in a position to
We're
be able
positive,
to proceed
ladies and
carefully
gentlemen.
as we assess the
Positive.
incoming data and the evolving outlooks and risks and make these decisions meeting by meeting.
And in your view,
The last one was my
I know
letter,
nothing has
yeah.
been decided yet, but what would one more hike at the end of the year do to the economy or to inflation? And on the other side, what would no hike do, if you could sort of game that out for us?
So, you can make the argument that one hike one way or the other won't matter, but for us, we're trying, obviously as a group, it's a pretty tight cluster of where we think that policy stance might be, but we're always going to be learning from data. We've learned all through the course of the last year that actually we needed to go further than we had thought. If you go back a year and what we thought, what we wrote down, it's actually gotten higher and higher. So we don't really know until, and that's why, again, we're in a position to proceed carefully.
Ooh, I like
at
that
this point.
MKP.
A year ago, we proceeded pretty quickly to get rates up. Now we're fairly close, we think, to where we need to get.
Real quick, guy, what is going on with him? Like, I've never been so embarrassed watching one of these. Like, I don't know what was going on with those two charts they showed us, but literally, I could have done that. And I was at the infant stage of computers when I was in elementary. They just put them in schools when I was in elementary to show you how old I am. I mean, come on. This is worse than the India moon landing. Well, no, it's not. I mean, that was moon landing. For fuck's sake. But, I mean, look what they're showing us. Like, come on. That's the data they're reviewing. That's the data he's speaking of when he says it's going to go down in 2028. I could draw something and say 2025, 28, throw a few dots down and say, hey, there we go. It's going down. Look at that.
It's just a question of reaching the right stance. I wouldn't attribute huge importance to one hike in macroeconomic terms. Nonetheless, we need to get to a place where we're confident that we have a stance that will bring inflation down to 2% over time. That's what we need to get to.
What's the December 17th ATK? That's a significant day for me. That'll be my 40th birthday on the 17th.
And we've been moving toward it as we've gotten closer to it. We've slowed the pace at which we've moved. I think that was appropriate. And now that we're getting closer, we have the ability to proceed carefully.
Let's go to Steve.
Steve Leisman, CNBC. Mr. Chair, I want to return to Colby's question here. What is it saying about the committee's view of the inflation dynamic in the
Good job,
economy
ATK.
that you achieve the same forecast inflation rate for next year, but need another 0.5 point of the funds rate?
Oh, by the way, this is a Bloomberg analyst right here. So he's always on Bloomberg, this guy. That's why he's always here.
Does it tell us that the committee believes inflation to be more persistent, requires more medicine effectively? And I guess a related question is, if you're going to project...
Sorry, I won't interrupt it again. I'll let you listen. Somebody asked about Julie, and I realized there's a lot more people in here than when I said it. She's home. Her surgery is successful. She's going to be out of it for a little while. But it was her 5th surgery since her car accident, so she's good. She's home. She's sleeping right now. Everything was successful. So I'll update you once, the progress gets going. But she's good. She's back home.
A funds rate above the longer run rate for 4
And my mom's
years
here.
in
My
a
mom's
row.
going to spend the night tonight.
At what point do we start to think, hey, maybe the longer rate or the neutral rate is actually higher? Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for the prayers
So
and the good wishes.
I guess I would point more to, rather than pointing to a sense of inflation having become more persistent, I wouldn't think that's
Yes,
not,
I'm
we've
definitely
seen
relieved.
inflation be more persistent over the course of the past year, but I wouldn't say that's something that's appeared in the recent data. It's more about stronger economic activity, I would say. So if I had to attribute one thing, again, we're picking medians here.
Yes, attribute one thing. She asked you.
I think broadly,
Or he asked you.
stronger economic activity means rates. We have to do more with rates, and that's what that meaning is telling you. In terms of what the neutral rate can be, we know it.
Audible! We need a new guy. Audible, get the next guy in. He's not saying...
We can't, the models and the economy reacts. And again, that's another reason why we're moving carefully now, because, there are lags here. So it may of course be that the neutral rate has risen. You do see people, you don't see the median moving, but you do see people raising their estimates of the neutral rate.
MC, I'll stop it for this. Have a good one. Be safe. And, Just look at it this way. You're at work for building for tomorrow. We need an income no matter where it comes from. Somehow, someway, you've got to generate money. You've got, well, currency in this case. But you've got to generate some kind of income so that we can succeed. That's the only way to build forward. So continue the grind. That's all you can do.
It's certainly plausible that the neutral rate is higher than the longer run rate. Remember, what we write down in the SEP is the longer run rate. It is certainly possible that...
Yes, exactly. That's what I said. I was wrong. I thought they were going to do 25 basis points because I didn't think there was a chance in how they were going to shoot us in the foot like this. Not admit it. He's absolutely on point.
Expected.
They know it's over. They would need to raise it 400 to 600 points every meeting going forward.
The economy needed a period of below trend growth to get inflation consistently back to 2%. You kind of get that in 2024 a little bit. 1.5% is just a touch below what's the estimate of potential. So the fact that you're getting so much done at so much less cost, does that represent a change in how you think inflation works, a change in how you think the economy works?
Nope, they stood pat.
Of supply healing versus demand destruction that's necessary to achieve
yes,
this?
Juan, they stood pat.
Yes, of course.
It's crazy.
It is a good thing that we've seen now meaningful rebalancing in the labor market without an increase in unemployment. And that's because we're seeing that rebalancing in other places, in, for example, job openings and in the jobs worker gap. You're also seeing supply side things. So that's happening. I would say, though, I still think, and I think broadly people still think that there'll have to be some softening in the labor market that can come through more supply, as we've seen as well. Also, remember, the natural rate we think is coming down, which is a supply side thing, so that the gap between any given unemployment rate that's lower than that and the natural rate comes down. That's a way for supply. That's a way for the labor market to achieve a better balance. So all of those things are happening. You're right. In the median forecast, we don't see a big increase in unemployment. We do see an increase, and but that really is just playing forward the trends that we've been seeing. That is not guaranteed. There may come a time when unemployment goes up more than that, but that's...
Wow,
that's
thank
really
you to the 110 people still watching, and thank you for everybody hitting the like button.
So just to boil that down,
I don't even know what to say anymore.
We've gone from a very
what are you supposed to
narrow
say
path
now? What are you supposed to say about the
landing to something different. Would you call the soft landing now a baseline expectation?
No.
Guys, by no means is this a soft landing. He's literally admitted that there is nothing left. They cannot do anything to stop this. This is like a well-oiled machine that you could throw a brick wall in front of and it's gonna just go right through. They've admitted now there is nothing they can do with this inflation fight. Nothing short of nothing. So they figure they can't do anything, so they're gonna print us into oblivion. They've just mortgaged our kids' futures is what they did. Again, they don't even care anymore. They don't care.
I would not do that. I would just say, what would I say about that? I've always thought that the soft landing was a plausible outcome, that there was a path, really, to
soft
landing.
Oh,
I've thought that, and I've said that since we lifted off. It's also possible that the path is narrowed and it's widened, apparently. Ultimately, this may be decided by factors that are outside our control at the end of the day, but I do think it's possible, and I also think this is why we are in a position to move carefully again. That we will restore price stability. We know that we have to do that, and we know the public depends on us doing that, and we know that we have to do it so that we can achieve the kind of labor market that we all want to achieve, which is an extended period, sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. We know that. The fact that we've come this far lets us really proceed carefully.
At this point, it's just embarrassing.
So I think, that's the end we're trying to achieve. I wouldn't want to handicap the likelihood of it, though. It's not up to me to do that.
What do you mean you broke our back?
Nick Timmer,
You've already broke our back. He's all
Chair
about
Powell,
it.
both you and Vice Chair Williams have indicated
Go
that
down with all these
sufficiently
paper waters
restrictive will
in
be
here,
judged
too,
on a
I've
real
noticed.
rather than nominal basis, implying some scope for nominal rate cuts next year, provided further compelling evidence that price pressures will continue to subside. Is the FOMC focused on targeting a real level of policy restriction? And can you explain what would constitute enough evidence that will allow the FOMC to normalize the nominal stance of policy while keeping real policy settings sufficiently restrictive?
I mean, yes, we understand that it's a real rate that will matter and that needs to be sufficiently restrictive. And
it's not just the USA. Anybody who has a central bank,
sufficiently
it's all the same.
Only when you see
Unfortunately,
it.
it's true.
It's not something you can arrive at with confidence in a model or in various estimates, you know. And so what are we seeing? We're seeing, you know, through a combination of the, you know, the unwinding of the pandemic-related demand and supply distortions and monetary policy.
See, and I don't know the best way to describe this. I don't worry about myself when this all happens. I know the plan. I've been taught by the best people over the last so long. I fear for my fellow man and woman, not just in the USA, but anybody who has a central bank. Like, I know the playbook. I'm trying my best to get it across to everybody. I know it needs to be done so that you can thrive. Like, this is the saddest thing for me. I'm going to thrive in an environment that's going to wipe out 90% of my peers. Like, how is that supposed to make you feel? You know, so I'm having a hard time right now because because I can live right now, I'm fine. I'm happy living the way I am. I'm not rich and I'm not poor, but I can definitely live better than most. But I live well within my means. But when it goes into where we're going, I'm not going to be in the lower middle class anymore because of things I've done. And it's not just because of crypto. Precious metals plays a huge part. But when it happens, so many people are going to get wiped out. And all my neighbors probably will be selling their houses. And, you know, I'll be building onto my house. Like, how is that going to look? So I'm just going to stay pat. I'm not moving. I don't care how big the bank account gets. Maybe I'll buy something. I'm just saying. And it won't even be the bank account. It's just, this is the, and some people are like, well, why would you worry about that? You're going to be fine. That's the truth. I worry about that. Like, I don't want to be in that position. I like where I'm at right now. I don't need to be rich amongst craziness. You know what I like? I like to build. I like the prospect of building something. But like, all of this, once it happens, what are you building? So what? So I gain while 90% of the people, it's more than that though. How many people can you go to right now and tell them what you know and tell them the proper things and they'll listen to you? If nobody in my family will listen to me, I'm pretty sure that each and every one of you are going to have a harder time, because at least I could say, hey, I've got 18,500 people that at least think I know something, or at least believe the same thing I believe, or whatever the case may be. And then if you add TikTok, I don't even do anything on TikTok because I don't personally like the platform, but everybody told me I should put my stuff on there and people would just follow, and I did, and 18,300 people have subscribed over there, which I don't even know how that's possible. I don't do anything on there. I just post my stuff. I don't target TikTok, nothing. I just post my YouTube stuff. But you say that, and there's still people won't listen. So it's like, that's my hardest thing. Like, is that crazy? Like, is that, like, to me, that's my biggest thing. Like, I don't want that scenario to play out because I know what it means for my peers. That's the bottom line.
Work in suppressing demand or alleviating very high demand. The combination of those two things is actually working. You're seeing, you know, inflation coming down. It's principally now in goods, also in housing services. You begin to see effects of it in non-housing services as well. So
I do this.
That is working.
I'm putting it out here every single day for somebody to see.
I think, well, you know, as we've said, we want to reach that.
Me too, JB. Welcome to the club.
Something that we're confident gets us to that level. And I think confidence comes from seeing, you know, enough data that you feel like, yes, okay, this feels like we can for now decide that this is the right level and just agree to stay here. We're not permanently deciding not to go higher, but we would, let's say if we get to that level. And then the question is, how long do you stay at that level? And that's a whole other set of questions. For now, the question is trying to find that level where we think we can stay there. And we haven't got.
Amen to that. Amen to that, Drew. Same thing with Julie when I met her 10 years ago and we got together. Almost 10 years now. Now she's 100% in sync and she can see it. And now she actually brings the stuff to me, you know, stuff that's going on in the world that makes me so proud. So thank God I'm blessed beyond blessed to have someone like Julie, just like you, Drew, with your wife, that understands and can see what's happening and is appreciative now. She didn't know what the hell was going on in the beginning because we didn't have a lot, and I'm buying precious metals, and she's like, what the fuck? You're spending 30 to 50% of our money on that we have left. Now she's so grateful because you see the prices of 2017 and now, and yeah, you get it.
To a point of confidence about that yet. That's the state of
this year. And even then it seems possible the core PCE inflation could come in even lower than the median at 3.7%. Would you see a case to raise rates still if it turned out that you were going to achieve the same real rate this year because the decline in inflation
Who commented they were a disabled veteran? Can you just comment real quick again just so I can see it?
Somewhat better than you currently anticipate.
The decision that we make at each meeting, and certainly at the last two meetings this year, it's going to depend on the totality of all the data. So the inflation data, the labor market data, the growth data, the balance of risks and the other events that are happening out there. We take all of that into account. So I can't really answer a hypothetical about one piece of that. It'll be trying to reach a judgment over whether we should move forward with another rate hike overall, and whether that would increase our confidence that yes.
Zog, thank you for your service. And I always say this, no matter if you're in my own country or another, a soldier's a soldier. We're just fighting the battle. I have enormous respect for somebody who's willing to put their life on the line for that. So thank you. And I'm blessed that you're here.
This is an appropriate move, and it will help us be more confident that we've gotten to the level that we need to get to.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Following up on
oh my God, this is so mind-numbing.
John Williams, the New York Fed president, obviously has said things to the effect of next year, as we see inflation, kind of again to Nick's point, as we see inflation coming down, we're going.
Like, what is? Who are these people? No offense to the younger ladies in the audience, but when did we shift from economic minds to the prototypical throw them out there and ask a question, read off a script person? Like, this is embarrassing. Where's the real people at asking the questions? Like, they're just getting you and I off the street and say, hey, you look cute, here, come ask this question. Like, come on. What is going on? This is supposed to be the FOMC press conference.
We need to reduce interest rates to make sure that we're not squeezing the economy harder and harder over time. And I wonder if that's the logic that you apply. Is that how you think about it? I also wonder, in the last press conference, you said something to the effect of, it's a full year out, those discussions, and people interpreted that to mean that you didn't see a possibility of a rate cut in the first half of next year. And I wonder if that was what you meant by that, or whether, how you're thinking about that timing.
No, when I answer these questions about cutting, I'm never intending to send a signal about timing. I'm just answering them as the question is expressed. So please.
Can I call you Z as
the first question is that how? Yeah. So as we go into next year, that's the question we'll be asking. Is taking into account lags and everything else we know.
I commend 94 of you for sticking it out through this. I know this is mind-numbing.
The time will come at some point, and I'm not saying when, that it's appropriate to cut. Part of that may be that real rates are rising because inflation is coming down. Part of it just may be that it'll be all the factors that we see in the economy. That time will certainly come at some point, and what you see is us writing down, a year ahead estimates of what that might be. And there's so much uncertainty around that. When we, in the moment, we'll do what we think makes sense. No one will look back at this and say, hey, we made a plan. It's not like that at all.
It could be fun.
These are estimates made a year in advance that are highly uncertain.
Yes, Jan.
That's how it is.
Look at these people. Yes, Mr. Powell, thank you for letting me ask a question. XRP Future Millionaire here. Why on earth would you pause rate hikes when we've already overinflated the money supply? How can you stand pat? What is going to happen now? Are you not going to have to double down, or even worse going forward, and have you not ushered in hyperinflation?
Thanks so much.
No, don't look at your script. I'd like you to read this. That's what I would say. and they'd say, excuse me, XRP Future Millionaire, get the fuck out of here.
Chair Powell, Neil Irwin with Axios. I wonder, how do you think about the question of whether the strong GDP growth we've been seeing is driven by excess demand versus supply side factors?
Excuse my French.
Labor force growth. And relatedly, if GDP keeps coming in hot, even in the absence of inflation resurgence,
this would be me, right there.
So on your first question, I mean, we're looking at GDP very, very carefully to try to understand really what's the direction of it, what's driving it, and it's a lot of consumer spending. You know, it's been the consumer's been very
good question, Miss Vicky.
Robust in its in spending. So that is, you know, that's how we're looking at it. Sorry, your second question was.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to you.
Without inflation.
So I think the question will.
Hey, who's this Brad Garlinghouse look-alike?
GDP is not a mandate, right? Maximum employment and price stability are the mandates. The question will be, is GDP, is the heat that we see in GDP, is it really a threat to our ability to get back to 2% inflation? That's going to be the question.
I love how they still act like we can get to
2%. You know, you're expecting to see this improvement.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How are you going to get back to 2% if we keep expanding the money supply? Excuse me, Mr. Powell. You keep acting like this is what I would say. Yes, XRP Future Millionaire, you can ask your question. Well, Mr. Powell, you keep acting like inflation is based on the price of the basket of goods and how the price is raising on those items month over month or year over year. But isn't it true that inflation, by definition, is the expansion and contraction of the money supply? Well, Tom, I'm going to have to read my script, but you are not allowed to answer that, ask that question. You'd say, well, Tom, I have to look at the data, and, you know, I'm looking at the data, and eventually I'll see that data. And as you can see by the data I put on the screen, it's not very good data, so it's very hard to, you know, that's all. I just want one time for somebody to ask them and say, isn't it that by definition, inflation, the expansion and contraction of the money supply? How is it not one person has ever asked that question? I mean, does anybody, am I crazy? Isn't that by definition what, well, it's not by definition anymore, but isn't that what it is? Isn't that what causes the price to rise on goods? We're expanding the money supply, which means our money's worth nothing. When you rein it in and contract it and take money out of the supply, it's going to make things less expensive. I mean, come on. This is insanity. A lot of people ask me, why aren't you a financial advisor? How can I put up with these kind of people? I'm not selling my soul. I'm just going to do what I do here. I could very easily be a financial advisor. I'd rather do this, or an analyst. You know what? I am a financial analyst and a financial advisor in my own way. Not legally, but I'm still doing it on my own. I couldn't work with these people. This is just disturbing.
Rebalancing in the labor market and inflation moving back down to 2% in a sustainable way. We have to have confidence in that, and you know, we'd be looking at GDP just to the extent that it threatens one or both of those.
The comments say it best.
With Politico. There are multiple external factors that are playing out right now. We see rising oil prices. We see auto workers striking. There's the looming, very real possibility of a government shutdown. And I was just wondering for each of
those because we can't pay our bills.
Could you talk about how you're thinking about how that might affect the course of the Fed?
This has no fucking relevance to this meeting.
There is a long list, and you hit some of them, but you know, it's.
I mean, what a stupid question. Who let her into this meeting? She ought to be ashamed of herself.
Higher long-term rates, oil price shock. You know, there are a lot of things that you can look at. And, you know, so what we try to do is assess all of them.
Oh, yes, I was definitely wrong. Who just said that? Oh, I was absolutely wrong. You should see the next update I'm going to do. All it's going to say is, I was wrong. The Fed gives up and admits that things are way worse than they ever admitted to us before. So I'm going to have a great title. I was absolutely wrong. I didn't think the Fed would admit that it was as bad as it is. By them not raising rates, they gave up. They said that there's no point of even fighting anymore. So you're damn right I was wrong. But you ought to be so sad that I was, because now what's coming next is so much worse. So much worse.
And you handicap all of them. And ultimately, though, there's so much uncertainty around these things. I mean, to start with the strike, first of all, we absolutely don't comment on the strike, as we have no view on the strike one way or the other, but we do have to make an assessment of its economic effects to do our jobs. So, you know, the thing about it is so uncertain. It will depend. The economic effects could affect. We've looked back at history. It could affect economic output, higher inflation. Drew. But that's really going to depend on how broad it is and how long it's sustained for. And then it also depends on how quickly production can make up for lost production. So none of those things are known right now. It's very, very hard to know. So you just have to leave that uncertainty, and we'll be learning, I think, over the course of the next intermeeting. It hasn't traditionally had much of a macroeconomic effect. You know, energy prices being higher, that is a significant thing. Energy prices being up can affect spending. It can affect over time. A sustained period of higher energy prices can affect consumer expectations about inflation. We tend to look through short-term volatility and look at core inflation. But so the question is, how long are higher prices sustained? We have to take those macroeconomic effects into account as well. Those are the glitch. I'm not sure if I hit them all, but I mean, ultimately.
It did it at the start of this as well.
Coming into this with an economy that appears to have significant momentum, and that's what we start with. But we do have this collection of risks that you mentioned.
Greg Torres from Bloomberg News. I was a little surprised, Chair Powell, to hear you say that a soft landing is not a primary objective. This economy is seeing added supply in a way that could create long-term inflation stability. We have prime-age labor force participation moving up, where people.
I mean, nobody would ask these questions again. I'm almost ready to end this. These are.
We've had a decent spate of home building, and since inflation's coming down with strong GDP growth, we may have higher productivity. All are which good for the Fed's longer-run target of low inflation. And if we lose that in a recession, aren't we opting for the awful hysteresis that we had in 2010? So are you taking this into account as you pursue policy? Thank you.
To begin, a soft landing is a primary objective, and I did not say otherwise. I mean, that's what we've been trying to achieve for all this time. The real point, though, is the worst thing we can do is to fail to restore price stability, because the record is clear on that. If you don't restore price stability, inflation comes back, and you go through, you can have a long period where the economy is just very uncertain, and it'll affect growth, it'll affect all kinds of things. It can be a miserable period to have inflation constantly coming back and the Fed coming in and having to tighten again and again. So the best thing we can do for everyone, I believe, is to restore price stability.
For anybody tuning, what in the fuck?
And would become
to raise rates
years strained. But in terms of where inflation's going in the near term.
Okay. For anybody just tuning in, to describe what's been going on.
It won't be that much higher. It would have.
Thank you, sir.
It would have been much higher than it was a year before. Now it may be below or at the same level. So, as those leases are rolling over, we're seeing what we expect, which is measured housing.
Literally, just listen to the first line. This is all you need to know. That's what I imagine Jerome Powell is behind scenes.
This is inflation coming down. Your second question was the lock.
He's not paying attention, so why should I?
Affecting things, really?
Is that going to affect your decisions to potentially bring rates down to their lower bound in the future, sort of creating that sort of bubble of buying?
I'm good. We got an up and coming Bill Nye here.
Sort of stagnates the housing market.
I think we look at I would look at the lock-in, the idea being that people are in very low rate mortgages. And
it sure is
even if they want to move now, they would be hard because the new mortgage would be so expensive. Play a role in our future decisions in a future in a future loosening cycle about whether we would cut rates? No, I don't think it would. I mean, I don't think that's. I think we'd be looking at what fundamentally what rates does the economy need, and in an emergency like the pandemic or during the global financial crisis, you have to cut rates to the point that you have to do what you can to support the economy. So I wouldn't think that would be a reason for us not to do that. It's not something we're thinking about at all right now, but down the road I wouldn't think so.
Hi, Nancy Marshall-Denson with Marketplace. Chair Powell, you've mentioned several things that would possibly weigh on consumer confidence, maybe cut back consumer spending, possible government shutdown, high gas prices. At this point, would the Fed welcome a decrease in consumer spending? Would that help you get inflation closer to 2% target?
I wouldn't say it that way. We're not looking for a decrease in consumer spending. It's a good thing that the economy is strong. It's a good thing that the economy has been able to hold up under the tightening that we've done. It's a good thing that the labor market's strong. The only concern, and it just means this: if the economy comes in stronger than expected, that just means we'll have to do more in terms of monetary policy to get back to 2%, because we will get back to 2%.
Loud and clear, Julie.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess on the other hand, would you worry that could contribute to...
Look at Julie with her nice 2-year member of Tom's Army, proudly in from surgery.
That's always a concern.
What a trooper.
Concern number one is restoring price stability, because in the long run, that's something we have to do so that we can have the kind of economy we really want, which is one with sustained period of tight labor market conditions that benefit all, as I've said a couple times. So,
yes,
that
you
said,
are.
Of course, we also now, given how far we've come with our rate hikes and how quickly we've come here, we do have the ability to be careful as we move forward because of that consideration.
Can one person please ask him a good question?
With The Economist. One of the factors in the economic resilience to date appears to be a lesser degree of rate sensitivity than in the past. Obviously, we've talked about...
We found Waldo. Oh my God.
Also companies that refinanced before last year. What is your thinking about the efficacy of rates and how that's changed? And then related to that, how do you think about the distributional consequences in the sense that if you're a relatively wealthy household with a long fixed rate mortgage, the past year has not been all that tough with rates going up, whereas if you're relying on your credit card for supporting your consumption, in fact, times are getting a lot tougher, a lot more quickly. Thanks.
So what?
What kind of question is that?
Yes, it's fair to say that the economy...
Yes, if your credit card fills up and there's no more credit left, you're screwed. Yes, that's correct. Well, what's so hard to understand about that? Why would you even ask that? A dumb question.
Possibly
get that guy out of the building as well.
One is just that household balance sheets and business balance sheets have been stronger than we had understood, and so that's spending is held up and that kind of thing. We're not sure about that. The savings rate for consumers has come down a lot. The question is whether that's sustainable.
Yes.
It could just mean that the date of effect
it was embarrassing.
Is later. It could also be that for other reasons, the neutral rate of interest is higher for various reasons. We don't know that. It could also just be that policy hasn't been restrictive enough for long enough. And there are many candidate explanations. We have to, in all this uncertainty, make policy.
Oh, we're going down.
Like what we
it's
have
just
right
a matter
now
of when.
is what's still a very strong...
Told you, this is the bull trap cycle right
making progress on inflation.
Of this death cross.
By many forecasts, many forecasts call for growth to moderate over the course of the next year. So that's where we are, and we have to deal with what comes.
Can you just end this so we can
question,
understand it?
Your second question was distributional, but can you be a little clearer about that?
Well, yes, let me just read off my cardboard piece of paper here.
My point there was that if you're somebody who has a long fixed rate mortgage, you've been able to endure the higher rates relatively easily. If you're somebody who's living month to month off of your credit card, current financing rates are punitive.
Oh my God, what a dumb
question. So the point I would make there is that we're trying to get inflation back down. The people who are most hurt by inflation are the people who are on a fixed income. If you're a person who's
right off the bat, everybody who's watching, if he was being honest about caring about those people, would he have not have raised rates today to get it under control and not continue to inflate the money supply, which we call expanding the money supply, which what makes things more expensive, causes interest rates to go up because all they can do is raise interest rates. They have to. There's nothing they can do. They have to raise the federal funds rate. I mean, I don't know what's so hard to understand anymore. He speaks like we're children because most of America is. That's why it's time for America to get educated outside of the United States teachings, which is the typical schooling system.
And all of your income, you don't really have any meaningful savings. You spend all your income on the basics of life.
I mean, is it any surprise we wonder sometimes why the kids think what they do? These people are teaching them. Just like why the people surrounded by us, we went to school with, they're such dopes. We were taught by these people. We were the outcasts, most of us, because we stood up for what we knew. 9 out of the 10 peers we had did not. That's why we were the outcasts. At least I was. Because I knew what was going on. I wasn't afraid to say it. And then I would just sit there and be like, are you kidding me? And I'd get in trouble and they would do whatever they could do, but it never changed what I knew. And thank God I was given the gift.
Food, transportation, heating, the basics. And prices go up by 5, 6, 7%, you're in trouble right away. Whereas even middle class people have some savings and some ability to absorb that. So it is for
what could he possibly have wrote down from that?
As much as for anybody, that we need to restore price stability, and we want to do it as quickly as possible. Obviously, we would like to do that. We'd like the current trend to continue, which is that we're making progress without seeing the kind of increase in unemployment that we've seen in past things. But you're right, though. When we raise rates, people who are, who are living on credit cards and borrowing are going to feel that more. They are, and of course, people with lots of savings also have a much lower marginal propensity to consume, and so they're not going to. It's not going to affect them as much.
Thank you,
typical consolidation. It's just squeezing between two major moving averages.
In the beige book recently, you can tell that the Fed has been surveying nonprofits and community groups about the economic health of low-income Americans, moderate-income Americans. I have 2 questions about this. Are you going to use that data to maybe come up with a sort of like a quarterly survey of those groups, like the senior loan officer survey? And
I mean, what more can you say about
also
this?
The second question is, from your recent readings of these surveys,
this is what I'll say.
How are low and moderate Americans doing? Is there this thing where like the GDP is strong because of wealthy Americans kind of driving things? I just want to get your sense of the health of that sector. Thank you.
So I don't know about the quarterly survey. That's an idea we can take away and think about. In terms of how low and moderate Americans, they're clearly we're suffering from high inflation. I think during the pandemic, the government transfers that happened were very meaningful. And if you know the surveys that we take showed that low and moderate income people were actually in very, very strong financial position. I think now it's a very hot labor market. And, you're seeing high nominal wages, and you're starting to see real wages are now positive by most measures. So I think overall households are in good shape. Surveys are a different thing. So surveys are showing dissatisfaction, and I think a lot of those just people hate inflation, and that causes people to say,
"Oops, here." So I can give you guys an update on my cannabis for anybody who's lost. 75 people. I like to do it at the back end of videos. So let me get my
there's a lot of good
camera.
things happening on household balance sheets, and certainly in the labor market and with wages. The biggest
We're getting closer to harvest. That's just one plant. I topped it a bunch of times, but it's definitely getting closer. This is just a small one that I put in later.
Thanks very much.
But that's that. Just so you guys can get an update. Everybody always asks me, so I figured I'd give you an update on how it looks. Oh my God, he finally showed mercy on us. Thank you for nothing. So, yeah. Oh, it's a Kush. Kush. Just Kush. Looking very nice so far. But I topped it about a good, I don't know, 10, 12 times. Until I couldn't do it anymore. But he showed mercy on us, so I'm going to be ending this as well. Oh, one more thing. I have my watermelon. I keep updating everybody. I know you remember what it looked like. Where's it at? They got one guy right. I got a bunch of them that are growing. But then I got... Where's this other guy? There's another few of them over here too. I'm very proud of my watermelon. Even though I was supposed to kill them, I just didn't have the heart. Because, you know, you can't have a bunch of them growing. Oh, here he is. Look at this little guy. Look at that little man. Wow, missed $100. Holy smokes. Wow. You know, I'm always pleasantly surprised by some of these donations. Miss Vicky, that is unbelievable. That's an unbelievable donation. Wow. Like, what am I supposed to say? I honor you with, well, there's one more other watermelon that has a decent, there's two different kind of watermelon. So there's that one, and then there's the one on this side as well. Where's he at? Oh, right. Where the hell is he at? Ah, there he is. This is the other kind. I did two different kinds. But, you know, the time of the year it is where I'm at in Michigan, it's going to be very hard to get these to actually grow. And then I've got over here a couple of these left. I think a little baby started growing. No, just that one left. Oh, yeah, there's a little baby. See that? So, but yeah, that's what we got going on here. And I got potatoes that are growing still inside of here. But you won't be able to see them. Everything else in my garden's already been harvested. But all that's potatoes growing right there. This used to be like squash and all that other stuff, but now it's getting too cold. So I make the most out of the area I have. But I thank everybody for tuning in. I really do. It's such a blessing to have each and every one of you with me. Miss Vicky, thank you so much for that donation. For anybody who's interested, I should be back at 7:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do the normal live. I don't know how long I'll be on, but I will definitely be on to do live. So with that, I appreciate each and every one of you. Stay blessed. With XRP, just remember the formation. We're still within the ascending, well, can't really say it's an ascending. Hold on. But you know the formation. If you've been watching for any length of time, you know the formation. We're still within it. Until you break down from here at about the 49-cent level, you can't continue breaking down. Otherwise, it's in where we have what look like a bear flag in the skies with a bull flag. If we break out of here, this is when you can reverse this narrative. So that's what we're looking for. We got to get over 54 cents if we want to reverse back up, and then ultimately break around 62 cents to get above the rising channel and start to push out. Other than that, we're just trying to maintain support. I appreciate each and every one of you. Stay blessed, everybody. And Miss Vicky, thank you so much for that.